Hello, once again. My name is Troy White, Portfolio Manager here at Hoodoo Financial. Today, we are discussing some more on real estate, and I want to cover two things, kill two birds with one stone. I want to talk about leverage and then some of the intricacies as to how we're going to acquire this leverage. So, in terms of the ratio analysis. So first off, let's talk about leverage in terms of what is it and why. Leverage is, I like to, the thought that comes to mind that's easy visual is the idea of when you were a kid and you would play on a seesaw. Remember, if you sit on one end, then you go to the bottom and there's no one sitting on that other end. However, if a heavier person were to sit on the end, it's going to make you go up very fast, very high. And that's because that person, you are experiencing leverage. That person's weight acted as leverage, which catapulted you up higher than you otherwise would have been able to go. That's fundamentally what leverage is all about. And leverage is how real property is acquired in America, basically through a loan. So leverage is simply put is how do you acquire an asset when you don't have the resources to buy that asset? Well, you can borrow the resources. So that is leverage, but there's a cost to everything. So when you borrow money, you are literally paying interest, and that interest is a fee for the use of someone else's money. And we need leverage to build wealth when it comes to real estate. And the way that we're going to do that is by a very simple overall strategy. And this strategy can be magnified, multiplied, scaled back, however you want. But the fundamental strategy is the same. And so I'll go over that strategy. So this is how you use leverage to build wealth with real estate investing. It's an effective strategy. So first off, you buy the first property. All right. The way you do that is borrow the money, you get the property, and then we've discussed a lot about going in it with the right price. So these techniques only work when you make right decisions, first off. So, don't pay too much for a property. Make sure it is that it fits the criteria, that fits the analysis that makes it a property worth investing in. First off, and so step one, buy property number one, and theoretically you would do it with the government loan that's 3% down, and the FHA loan 3% down. That'll get you into that first property, and you rehab the property and you increase the rent. So first off, since this could be, since this is a residential loan, I am suggesting that you use the most bang for your buck in this scenario and get a fourplex. So get a fourplex, rehab it, and increase the rent. That's right off the bat. So wait 1 year. This might take you a year, but if it didn't take you very long, Still, wait 1 year. Why am I waiting 1 year? Because we need to refinance this property, and waiting 1 year um, will allow you through your rehab methods and time to want you to force some appreciation into this property. So you refinance the property, you pull out whatever equity that you have generated, that you have forced into this property, and then you're going to use that equity to purchase property number two. All right. Now you've purchased property number two after refinancing property number one. You're going to rehab property number two and increase those rents. Now you have two income producing properties. You're going to wait another year. And through your rehab activities, you should force some appreciation into that property as well. And you're going to wait a year. You're going to you're going to refinance, pull out the equity through the forced appreciation that you've done, and you're going to purchase property number three. And now you have three properties that are creating cash flow for you. So you're going to refinance property number property number three. We've already refinanced property number two. You're going to refinance property number two, and if you haven't already, and number three. You're going to pull out the equity, and this time you're going to establish a home equity line of credit, and you're going to um, get another appraisal on your first property. As the years go on, you constantly want to get reappraisal, maybe not every year, but every couple of years. Because if the value went up, what we want you to do is get a home equity line of credit on as many of these properties as possible. After you get a home equity line of credit, you're going to be on the lookout for new properties, and you'll pull the trigger on those properties at any time, because you have access to these resources through your home equity line of credit. So you're going to rinse and repeat. You just keep doing this over and over and over. And this is how we're going to take advantage of the leveraging our assets so that we can continuously get more assets. So in order to do this, use these leveraging tools, methods, we need to do a ratio analysis, and we need to. This is where financial planning and the real estate investing merge into each other and become. They work together to improve your personal scenario. So we need to do a ratio analysis, and uh, first off, so a ratio analysis is basically doing checking your financial stats and putting them into ratios that are expressed in percentages so that they are quick answers for your underwriting guidelines, and for yourself to know if you have what is required for a certain property or not, and if you when it gives you the ability to act quickly. So let's dive into some of these ratios. We need your operating ratio. which highlights the relationship between your gross income and your operating expenses. We're going to need our break even ratio, which is it shows the percent of gross income required to meet your cash expenditure requirements. Your debt coverage ratio. This shows a relationship between your net operating income and the debt service obligation. Income multipliers. Um, an income multiplier analysis is basically a technique um, that expresses the relationship between the price and the gross or your net income. And so let's talk about some of these. They're basic calculations, and it's don't be scared off by math. You just plug in the number into a formula. Use your calculator. Understand, for those of you who are math scary people, realize it doesn't matter how uh, how intricate any calculation or formula looks. All math, no matter how complex, consists of four components only: add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Period. There is no other calculation. So even a lot of formulas will string together aspects of all four of those, and that's where people get scared off if you're a math scary person. But for in order for you to make money, you're going to be involved with math, so get used to it. All right, so let's talk about some of the income multipliers. So a gross income multiplier, um, also often referred to as gross rent multiplier, reflects the relationship between the property's price and the effective gross income. So a gross income multiplier equals the market price divided by the effective gross income. So if your market price is 100,000 and you're making 25,000 a year on their property, then your gross income multiplier would be 4. All right. Your net income multiplier is those are calculated the same way, but the only difference is that it's net income instead of gross income. So your net income multiplier is your market price divided by your net operating income. So if your market price is 100,000 and your net income is 12,000, then your net income multiplier is 8.33. Some other financial ratios. Um, Now, this helps with your comparisons when you're doing comparables and things. The operating ratio is something you're going to need. It's the percentage of gross income consumed by the operating expenses. All right. So operating ratio equals your operating expenses divided by your gross income. So if your operating expenses are 13,000, then your gross income is 25,000, then your operating ratio is 52%. All right. Now remember, these totals, you have them. Just so do the analysis. Have these ready for when, especially for your underwriter. You want to when you're doing deals and you're looking for financing, have these ratios ready, and if it's so that you will know if you don't. Often the underwriter will give you what their criteria is. You do your analysis yourself. You don't have to waste time. You can say, oh, they require a net income multiplier of X. You can figure out what you have right there. They require operating ratios of Y. You can figure it out right there. All right, your break even ratio analysis. That's that I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. When do you break even? You want to do an analysis to figure out when you break even. Often referred to as your default ratio is useful when using a before tax cash flow analysis. So your break even ratio equals operating expenses plus your debt service divided by your gross income. All right. Operating expenses. So if your operating expenses are $13,000 and your debt service is 7,000, in my example, I have the number is 7,553. So your operating expenses plus the debt service of 7,553 divided by your gross income. And earlier we were saying our gross income is 25,000. So in this scenario, your break-even ratio will be 82.2%. All right, debt coverage ratio. This is one that is important, often referred to as debt service coverage ratio. This is very important. So your debt service coverage ratio is your net operating income divided by your annual debt service. So if your net operating income is 12,000 and your debt service is 7,553 from the last example, then your debt service coverage ratio is 1.59. So, and that's an important one that you're going to need to know. All of them. You need to do an analysis of them all. I mean, you literally can set up a spreadsheet and you just type in the variables, what your totals are on these variables, and you'll do all just set it up that way. Do all the math for you. All right. Profitability measures. You need to know if you're profitable or not, right? So your overall capitalization rate. So your cap rate is your net operating income divided by the market price. So if your net operating income is 12,000 and your market price is 100,000, then your cap rate is 12%. All right. Equity dividend rate. Sometimes it's called the equity, it's always called equity dividend rate. And it's a percentage of the required initial equity cash outlay. So equity dividend rate equals before tax cash flow divided by your initial cash outlay, the amount of money you put out. So before tax, oh man, what's up? I'm not moving around in here enough or something. What's up? So so that's your equity dividend rate. All right. So just to do the math, if your equity dividend rate equals your before tax cash flow divided by your initial cash outlay. So if you receive $4,447 and your cash, that's your before tax cash flow, and you put out $25,000, then Your equity dividend rate is 17.79% on that one. Cash on cash return, very important. Um, it's important for you to understand this total. Um, it's your first year's expected spendable cash. That's after all financing costs and income taxes. All right, so cash on cash return is what that is. So, what is my cash on cash return? It's the after tax cash flow divided by the equity investment. So, how much I put in to the property, how much in equity. So if I put $25,000 down, then I got 25,000 in equity. So divide that by your after tax cash flow. So if my after tax, remember I said before tax cash flow was 4,447. Well, if my after taxes is 3,723, divide that by what I put down of 25,000, then my cash on cash return will be 14.9%. All right. Payback period analysis is important. One is simple. It's simple, but it's just a rule of thumb to estimate the number of years that it's going to take for you to recoup your investment on that. So your payback period equals your cash outlay divided by your annual cash flow. So if you put down 10,000 on the property and your annual cash flow is 2,500, then your payback period will be 4. It would take you 4 years to get that. So you can expand those numbers, right? 10,000 where there's 100,000, so on. Just plug in your number. And there's other analysis, but I mean, other ratio analysis, but you're going to need those because you're going to need to determine if these are good deals and if they're a good deal for you. So, how do you compare apples and oranges? Is to do this ratio analysis so that you could break it down and just say, oh, okay, well, this one I'm receiving 8%, and this one is it. This one it's going to take me 4 years, and this one for payback period, this one is going to be 5 years. And so all of those give you a different. It's like lets you look into a different window. So it's not necessarily giving you a thumbs up, thumbs down, but a way to compare these because there's 5 basic factors that's gonna tell you the relative attractiveness of a real estate investment. And that's the anticipated stream of net cash flow to you, the investor, the expected timing of your cash receipts, right? And the degree of certainty that you can expect to receive these, and the yield available from alternative investments. So these ratios help give you how to compare these other investments and to see the timing and how much. So you can say, oh, well, this one's going to take me 5 years, but I'll receive more in and oh, this will take me 4 years, but I'll receive less. And also, the final factor is your attitude towards risk, because all of this requires a risk reward trade off. Because, I mean, and it's what level of risk are you able to withstand and take on? So if the more you're able to take on, the more potential reward you are able to receive. And that's not a guarantee, but it's a likelihood, or it's the goal. You take on more risk because theoretically it should reimburse you a higher level of return. So That's just a little bit about leverage, what it is, and what we need to know to determine the right the the ratios that are going to be involved in the analysis for us to take on this leverage. And how much leverage do we take on? Is it a good deal to take on this leverage, or should I even? So first off, we're going to have to use leverage. We don't have to, but it's wise. And we need these ratios to determine, well, what's one deal better than the other deal, and which one is better for me out of the opportunities that are laid before me. What's the opportunity cost? And some of these we're going to have to do a time adjusted measurement. So that is the present value of sum now, net present values, internal rate of return, and present value. So basically, what that's saying is money now. $100 now is worth how much in a month. So if I could, what's the equivalent of having 100 now and the exact equivalent of that having it in a month? Well, that might be like $107 in a month is the equivalent for me of having $100 right now. Anything above that, well, above $7, maybe I'll wait a month and get it because it's going to benefit me because I'll have more than this present amount. And so, and the internal rate of return is determines the appropriate rate of cash flows, and that should be discounted. Um, it's a way it's discounting the cash flow and way for you to anticipate how basically show you what am I actually making on my money. And we'll get into some of the compounding and discounting issues in another video, but we'll cut it there. That's a bit on leverage and the financial ratios that you're going to have to familiarize yourself with to take on leverage and do the analysis on these properties. Thanks for listening.